Hi, boys and girls. I'm trying to get a good picture of what's happening outside today, so I'm looking for a good background. This is my back deck, kind of trying to get a good view. I can kind of see it a little bit. You probably know it's snowing, so this is a perfect day for you to stay inside, get cozy with a good book, and do a lot of good reading. So on First Chapter Friday, that's what we're going to do. Can you see the snowflakes? I don't think it's going to stick, but it is really pretty to look at right now. I'm going to show you what else is fun on days when it's snowy. I'm going to show you, this is my living room. I'm going to show you what else is kind of fun and cozy. Can you tell right there what's going on? We got a nice fire going. So I could sit right over here. I'm going to show you my reading chair. There's my reading chair. So it's snowing outside. I've got a fire. And guess what I'm going to do in that chair? I'm going to do some reading. So I will meet you there in a little bit for First Chapter Friday. And I'll tell you what I'm going to read. Of course, there's my daughter. Did you see her? She's eating her lunch. I'm going to read Because of Winn Dixie, one of my favorite books. I guess that's kind of what I say all the time, because I have lots of favorite books. So I'm going to show Avery. She's eating over there at the dining room. There she is. She's embarrassed. She's going to join me for First Chapter Friday, too. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, I'm in my comfy reading chair. I've got my blanket, and I've got my book that I'm going to read today. I'm going to read the first chapter of this book, and the reason I do that is because then I can get you interested in the book. If you really like it, you can check the book out for yourself. If you don't like it, then you don't have to read it, so it's just kind of a little preview. I have many copies of this book at school, so when we get back to school, if you want to borrow one from me, you can. Or you can get it at the library when they reopen, or maybe you have another copy of this on your own. This is by Kate DiCamillo. She's a really good author. I don't know if you've ever read Love That Dog. That's another book by her that's good. I also like the book Tiger Rising. So she's got a lot of books that you could choose if you wanted to read more about her. I'm going to read the first chapter, and sometimes when you have books that don't have pictures, it's really fun to visualize what you think the characters look like and what you think the setting looks like. You can do that with a piece of paper and a pencil if you want to. You don't have to. That's just one thing you could do as I'm reading Because of Winn Dixie. So here's First Chapter Friday. I'm going to put my magic glasses on. I hope you enjoy this book. Chapter 1. My name is India Opal Baloney, and last summer my daddy the preacher sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes. And you know what I came back with? A dog. This is what happened. I walked into the produce section of the Winn Dixie grocery store to pick out my 2 tomatoes, and I almost bumped right into the store manager. He was standing there all red-faced, screaming and waving his arms around. "Who let a dog in here?" he kept on shouting. "Who let a dirty dog here in the grocery store?" At first, I didn't see a dog. There was just a lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor, tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn Dixie employees running around waving their arms just the same way that the store manager was waving his. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly. His tongue was hanging out and he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life seen a dog smile. But that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth, and then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off the display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and the onions and the green peppers. The manager screamed, "Somebody grab that dog!" The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with that manager and thank him for the good time that he was having in the produce department. But somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day, because lying there on the floor, right in front of everybody, guess what he started to do? He started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. "Please," said the manager, "somebody call the pound." And then I did it. I waited, but I hollered, "Wait a minute! That's my dog! Don't call the pound!" I yelled. All the Winn Dixie employees, they turned around and they looked at me, and I knew that I had done something big. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pound. "Here, boy," I said. The dog stopped licking the manager's face, and he put his ears up in the air and he looked at me, like he was trying to remember where he knew me from. "Here, boy," I said again. And then I figured out that that dog was probably just like everybody else in the world, that he would want to get called by a name. Only I didn't know what his name was, so I just said the first thing that came into my head. And I said, "Here, Winn Dixie." And that dog came trotting over to me just like he'd been doing it his whole life. The manager sat up and gave me a hard stare, like maybe I was making fun of him. "It's his name," I said, honest. The manager said, "Don't you know not to bring a dog into the grocery store?" "Yes, sir," I told him. "He got in here by mistake. I'm sorry, it won't happen again." "Come on, Winn Dixie," I said to the dog. I started walking, and he followed along behind me as I went out of the produce department and down the cereal aisle and past all the cashiers and out the door. Once we were safe outside, I checked him over real careful, and he didn't look that good. He was big, but skinny. You could see his ribs. And there were bald patches all over him, places where he didn't have fur at all. Mostly, he looked like a big piece of old brown carpet that had been left out in the rain. "You're a mess," I told him. "I bet you don't belong to nobody." He smiled at me. He did that thing again where he pulled his lips back and showed me his teeth. He smiled so big that it made him sneeze. It was like he was saying, I know I'm a mess. Isn't it funny?" It's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. "Come on," I told him. "Let's see what the preacher has to say about you." And the two of us, me and Winn Dixie, started walking home. I think that's an excellent way to start a book. That's the first chapter of Because of Winn Dixie. And I know that they made a movie about this book too. So maybe after you read the book, then you could watch the movie and see if the things that you visualized in your head are the same way that they did it in the movie.